because some of the kind of temporary events that take place are, involve, it's not like I'm not talking about literal performance necessarily, but different forms of performance. So this one is an example of one of my favorite choreographers, Willy Dorner, out of Vienna. He does these pieces where his dancers insert themselves in interstitial spaces in the city. In this case, it's some kind of, I don't even know what this is, but if you look at his pieces, all his pieces are about these bodies. They're called bodies in urban spaces, and they insert themselves in between railings, in between any kind of gap. Looks like a staircase. Sideways, you mean? I don't know. I think this is the correct orientation of the photograph. Or, yeah. Yeah, another, I mean, if you, there are YouTube videos on these pieces, but what it does really is it calls attention to the otherwise unnoticed places of cities, the urban gaps, the voids. And this is another, it's a completely different form of performance, but there's an artist by the name of Lauren Vaughn who is really interested in issues of water in Los Angeles. So many of you who may have come across this in your research about the history of water and the bringing of water to Los Angeles through the building of the aqueduct. So last year was the centennial of the construction of the aqueduct, so 100 years. So because it's so big, Lauren wanted to celebrate that and do a big event. So she had 100 people on 100 mules walk from Los Angeles to Owens Valley. It was like a 3-day hike, basically, with the mules of 100 of these animals. So it's really just public awareness and a big statement, and it also gives you a sense of scale. The scale of the aqueduct. We don't really think that much about water and where it's coming from necessarily when we're turning on the tap, but she's really trying to call attention to the 240-mile route of the LA aqueduct. That's how long it is. And when you get 100 people on 100 mules, you kind of, it's a way to bring the human scale to something that is of infrastructural scale. So that's how big. It's essentially a pipe, but it's not, your average height that's in your house. And it's the reason why Los Angeles exists. So it's a pretty big deal. And just another fun project by this artist group again. They decided that parks should also move. So I guess it's an expansion of the Parking Day project. So instead of just staying still on the parking spot, why not put wheels on it and actually have these moving parks go through the city? So it's just a fun, it was part of a public art festival calling attention to temporary public space called Park Cycles. So just for my last part of the lecture, I'm going to show a short video on a group called the LA Urban Rangers. And by the title of their group, it suggests that they treat the city almost like a national forest. So they actually dress like rangers, but they're exploring the city. So they have a really great project that they do in Malibu. It's an event, it's a temporary event, but it's also very critical. And we'll talk about it.
put others to do likewise. In 2007, the Rangers launched the Malibu Public Beach. The Los Angeles Urban Rangers develops campfire talks, field kits, guided hikes, and other interpretive tools to explore the intertwined human and natural ecologies of our home megalopolis, and to equip others to do likewise. In 2007, the Rangers launched the Malibu Public Beaches Project, part of their Public Access 101 series, to outfit people with the skills they need to find, use, and enjoy a public beach in the seaside town of Malibu, California.
On behalf of the Los Angeles Urban Rangers, we'd like to welcome you this morning to the sparkling beaches of Malibu here at the base of the Santa Monica Mountains. My name is Ranger Emily Scott, and this is my partner, Ranger Jenny Price, who will be co-leading the tour today. If you need water along the way today and you're feeling dehydrated, the closest watering hole, I believe, is Starbucks. Probably the most dangerous part of our tour today is this urban trail called the PCH, which is very congested with traffic and will become more so as the day goes on. It's important to wear sunscreen at the beach, of course, and in general in Los Angeles County, there is a possibility we could run into security guards on our tour here at Broad Beach today. And as Jenny mentioned, if we do run into security guards, you'll want to make sure to grab a ranger.
Now we're going to stay on public property at all times, and part of this safari is to show you how to do that. The mean high tide line is I've heard different figures, it's either 18 or 19-year average high tide. The accepted working on the ground definition of where the public lands are is the last high tide line, which is called the daily high water line. So basically the public has the right on every single beach in California to walk on the wet sand. See all this beautiful dry sand? What about that? Do we have a right to that? Well, as it turns out, yes. On every single one of these beaches, there are significant numbers of public easements on the dry sand. A public easement is a piece of private property that technically remains private property, but the owner cedes control. Then we're going to actually practice standard beach behaviors on these easements.
So I'd like whoever has the trailblazing kit per group to pull out your easement map. Again, hot off the press from the California Coastal Commission. Right now, we are on 22048, public access extending 25 feet inland from tide water line. So we're going to find the daily tide line, and we're going to start measuring 25 feet inland. You'll use your tape measure provided, and then there are 4 stakes that you'll use to mark that top edge. Practice your public behavior, your assigned public behavior. Group 2 is playing frisbee. You guys are reading trashy Hollywood gossip magazines. Group 5 is going to be a sandcastle building / sand digging. Practicing yoga on your public easement. Wildlife watching. Did everybody see the dolphins, sea lions? There are lots of birds out today. The most common wildlife sightings probably on the beach include illegal dogs. Dogs are not legal on these beaches, as well as Homo sapiens of all sorts and varieties. Surfers, as Jenny mentioned, dog walkers, the silicone enhanced. There's a whole group of people, many of whom may be using this single public transportation line, which is the Metro 534 bus that runs up and down the PCH. So on any given day, there are hundreds, if not thousands, of gardeners, maids, nannies, construction workers that come to Malibu that are often seen on the other side of the development, but very rarely seen on the beaches.
This beach probably, to my experience, has more signs than any other beach. If you look at the guide, it will show you a rough taxonomy of the signs that we have basically divided into 4 categories: true, somewhat true, usually false, and false. Then we're going to actually go for that next house, and we're going to try to obey one of these signs. Okay, so we have our tape measure, so we need to go 40 feet in that direction in order to be on the public land.
Wow, it's nice out here in the public easement. Okay, 12 feet. Any volunteers to go the next 28 feet? That's one example of a sign that might be trickier to follow than some of the others.
There was very briefly a public access accessway. It was a very unusual event. A homeowner voluntarily opened an accessway on the edge of the house. Not only was he going to open the accessway, but he was going to try to find a caretaker so that people would be able to use the bathroom. 3 weeks later, he closed it. In honor and commemoration of the brief life of this accessway, join in a moment of silence.
This land is your land, this land is my land, from California to New York Island, from the redwood forest to the Gulf Stream waters. This land was made for you and me.
Yeah, I really love the work of rangers. You should keep an eye out for them. I don't think they do this mountain for them. They've been doing it for years, and they have all kinds of other projects. But I guess you detected the tongue-in-cheek in it. What were they critiquing? What were they calling attention to? Private and public space. You guys had a lecture on private and public space. So this shows you that you can never take anything for face value. You know, don't just look at the data, look at the information on the map, and assume that it's all clear. Clearly, there's a lot of fuzziness in kind of the definitions of public and private space. And I think the situation in Malibu really calls that out, where you have these private residences facing with a public beach as their backyard. And where that public stops and where the private begins is never that clear. Of course, it's just sand. And they just made it apparent how odd these easement lines are, these squares that one sees. I went on one of these tours, and they made us like stake out the easement. And it's just this little square, and we're doing our beach thing in the square. So it's a great way to bring people. It's very different when you read about these things versus actually going there and experiencing it. So that's really the goal of this group, is that they want to call attention to these. They're not even activists or trying to change anything. They're really just trying to make people understand the nuances of public and private space in LA by bringing anyone who wants to join the tour there. So something to think about as you embark on assignment 3, where you're actually making a proposal. So remember that the proposal can be physical change, like some of the examples we saw, temporary or permanent, but it can also be more performative or event-like, or really about public awareness, like this project. So today's lecture was really just trying to give you the broad range of possibilities within this field of temporary urbanism, and it's something that you're all going to encounter in your disciplines. So it's continue to research this. And I think we have a few more minutes. Anyone have any questions? They have more online. So the question was, do they ever get complaints from the homeowners? So technically, even if they did, they're not doing anything illegal, right? They're accessing their so-called public space, and that's part of it. It's sort of invisible public space, and they can of course always argue that they're in public space. Any other questions? Comments? Over there?
What kind of agencies do you need to contact in order to do like a do-it-yourself, or just to have, some type of program the way you showed in the slides?
Yeah, if you actually want to remove a parking spot and build something, well, you would start with the city. They, of course, are in control of the streets, and you need to let them know what you're proposing. Most of these designers would come to the city with drawings and diagrams showing exactly what they want to do. And, you know, like going back to why temporary, the more temporary it is, the more likely it will to get approved. Because of course, then the city will say, oh, well, it's only for 1 day, so I guess that's no big deal. So that's another reason why people choose temporary. Other questions? I mean, a question like that is just, it also is thinking about your next assignment. Most students don't really get to that level in their thinking about the project. Of course, especially architects or landscape architects who are not so involved in policy. Of course, we just make proposals and we make suggestions. But I think, you know, because you're working in a team involving all three disciplines, you can also incorporate into your project the the steps required to make the thing happen. You know, the first step is contact the city. You know, once we have some drawings, or maybe you just test it out by just hanging out in that spot and until someone tells you to go away, or whatever you feel the step should be to get the space prepared for what you want to do. So don't just think of the project in terms of, oh, I'm going to do this object, but what is the process? So you actually have to design the process, and that's where the diagrams come in. Any other questions? Okay, so one more?
For the those temporary parks, if that was to be conducted on campus, who would we speak with?
To turn one of the parking spots on campus into a parklet. You could speak to M&O, Maintenance and Operations. I believe they're in charge of all the streets. I mean, it's the kind of thing if you as students wanted to do, you should bring it up to, you know, your department chair or even your professor. Because you want a sort of line of authority behind you, not that students are important, but it does help to have the backing of departments and colleges. And it's the kind of thing, it would be a great club event, like if you have your AIA student club, ASLA student club. These are really great ways to get something going. Okay, so I'll let you go, except for the landscape architecture students, and I guess the architecture students, you can either stay here or hang out outside and come back at 12, because you have a mandatory meeting.